Now, within this documentation, I want to bring up this woman, this timeless child, this mother, this absolute drop-dead human being, genius, just took my breath away the first time I heard her work, and I went, what was that? The way Beatrice sucks in life, as you just witnessed. Wait till you hear this. JESS PTAK.
So yesterday I read something, and I want to share that here before I start reading my work, but I read something yesterday. It was written by Lenore Kendall, who is also a beat poet. She wrote this as an introduction to her collection of poetry. And I read it yesterday, and my heart did this firework of celebration. I was so excited about it, and share that here. Euphemisms chosen by fear are a covenant with hypocrisy, and will immediately destroy the poem and eventually destroy the poet. Any form of censorship, whether mental, moral, emotional, or physical, whether from the inside out or the outside in, is a barrier against self-awareness. Poetry is alive because it is a medium of vision and experience. It is not necessarily comfortable. It is not necessarily safe. Poetry has moved out of the classroom and into the street, and thus brought about a flow of cross-pollination, many of the fruits of which are viable in both mediums. Academia tended to breed the fear of offense, i.e. that which might offend someone. Visions and language both were often dwarfed and muted, the poem too often becoming a vehicle for literary gymnastics. Street poetry avoids the fear trap, but too often loses its vision through a lack of clarity, through sloppiness, through a lack of the art of the craft. Poetry as poetry has no need to be classified in either of the above pigeonholes, nor in any other. It exists. It cannot exist in the company of censorship. When a poet censors his vision, he no longer tells the truth as he sees it. When he censors the language of the poem, he does not use those words which, to him, are the most perfect words to be used. This self-stunting results in an artificial limitation imposed on an art whose direction is beyond the limits of the conceivable. There are no barriers to poetry or prophecy. By their nature, they are barrier breakers, bursts of perceptions, lines into infinity. If a poet lies about his vision, he lies about himself and in himself. This produces a true barrier. When a poet, through fearful expediency, uses language other than that which is perfect to the poem, he becomes a person of fearful expediency. When an outside agency takes it upon itself to attempt the censorship of poetry, it is censoring the acceptance of truth and the leap toward revelation. When a society becomes afraid of its poets, it is afraid of itself. A society afraid of itself stands as another definition of hell. A poem that is written and published becomes available to those who choose to read it. This seems to me to imply one primary responsibility on part of the poet, that he tell the truth as he sees it, that he tell it as beautifully, as amazingly as he can, that he ignite his own sense of wonder, that he work alchemy within the language. These are the form and existence of poetry itself. A good part of the audience for modern poetry is young. We move in a world where the polarities and possibilities of life and death exist as constant consciousness. Once the concept and availability of overkill was made public knowledge, the aura of the possibility of cosmic death became visible. There have been eras when the young could slip softly into their elders' lives when, if they wanted to ignore the deeper issues of humanity, of man's relationship to man, it was made easy for them. This is not such a time, and the choices of the young are deep and hard. At 18, the young men must decide whether they will enter into the national pastime of death. A great many of the young are choosing to manifest a different way of life, one motivated toward pleasure, toward enlightenment, and toward mutual concern, instead of accepting the world of war and personal despair which has been offered them by the majority of their elders. There are heavy choices to make, and there is no avoidance possible. Those who read modern poetry do so for pleasure, for insight, sometimes for counsel. The least they can expect is that the poet who shares his visions and experiences with them do so with no hypocrisy. To compromise poetry through expediency is the soft, small murder to the soul.
Bravo. Repeat her name, please.
That was Lenore Candell, San Francisco, 1967.
67.
Yeah,
A visionary.
still holds true, right?
Yeah,
All right.
that's extraordinarily profound. Please forward that to me.
Absolutely.
I want that in my collection. That's awesome. God, this
Right?
Candell.
I was so excited when I read that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You need a moment for that.
Thinking. Okay, so this first piece is called This Is Not the Ground. We're on the wood. Once our bed frame made a shadow here. Now it's sunrises and a yoga mat holding books and my midnight body in the alone. Tonight he sits and shows me, pulling from his pocket, flat and gray. This is not the ground, he says. This is the bus and the paper in your hair. This is the open window and the spring to summer seats. I feel it in the lines of my palm, the way we learn to kiss, the way we learn to make a new thing out of us. It lived for a time between the heartbeats out of every broken piece of earth. This one is a red Jeep. This one is learning how to breathe while drowning. We all know how that goes. And with it, the sunset over the waves, the silent space after the wedding car shuts the doors, and we ask each other, now what? The first night, learning what it is to see yourself in another body, how to keep us all alive. The round in my hand is how many times it took to sing them to sleep. It's how many times we fought on the porch and how many times we made it right until morning. Now when I walk on a path, I'm careful to know this is a life and this is another. This is a love and this is another. They sit like peace. They sit in the weather. They sit and they move and they bury and they skip across the lake. They'll be here likely longer than me, holding lifetimes underfoot, in pockets, in the changing hands that choose them. I hand it back. And there is nothing to say here anymore, but thank you for walking me this far. Thank you. My God is not found in books written by the hands of others. My Holy Scripture is embedded in the contours of my flesh, in the drumming of my heart, born of flameless firewalks, born of grief of my own death again and again, sometimes at the edge of my own held sword, born of the love I can't explain, the kind without language, essence, even poetry barely tongues. It's born of the trees, of the hawk and what she carries, of the wisdom my future left for me to gather as I walk. I am my own book, not leather bound, not found in hotel rooms, but on mountains, in late night bedrooms with song in my mouth and child joy in my hands. I am my own word.
Bravo.
I have been shown and I have been told this paradise, this great Eden, of false forbiddens. The shame, the deepest lie, held tightly in our wombs, held caged within the hearts of men, in the webbing between the far-removed strangers. That what is paradise but a garden? What is an apple but an endless fruit? What is a garden without its flowers? We are not building a stone-walled fortress. We are not building a gated heaven of exclusivity. In the chest of us is a seed, a dark soil of no thing, and what grows from no thing is a flower, is a rose, is an unfolding petaled love. What it gives in sustenance, what it gives in color, what it gives in fragrance, what it gives in medicinal apothecary prescription. This paradise is not of stone, but of open flowers singing songs of red, of passion, of unfolding harmonics, and this is the garden we make. All right, so this is called Trees Don't Run. Trees don't run. They can't run. Fall over, sure, splinter apart, offer themselves time and time again. Trees don't run. Imagine being so tall you see the storm coming before the sun steps aside. You in the mountain, you have conversations in silence. You know what the other knows. You feel it differently, but you know it the same. Imagine being so tall you see the clouds and know, I am a tree. I can't run. But you are a tree, you know nothing of running to begin with. A tree knows about breathing. It knows because it digs roots into the earth and it holds crystals in its grasp and it says, live here. It becomes a housing complex. No one in the dirt is homeless. It mingles with the others and it says, we need each other. We need each other. A tree knows about breathing because trees don't run. It digs roots into the earth and declares, I'll stay here. I'll stand here. I see the storm coming, she says to the mountain, we'll stand here. Trees don't run. The sky does its grieving and branches move and leaves turn to catch a drink of it and they bend into the discomfort, but trees don't run. My yard holds space for half a pine. The storm came in October. We found pieces of her across the driveway. We found vacated nests and needles and life that couldn't hold on. She is half. She is the tallest one. She is a watchful place for the hawk. She bends still, only half and still standing. I ask her in the sunrise, how will I be here today? And she says, watch. She says, breathe. She says, stand. She says, become a home, become paper, become a resting place for a word. She says, hold tight, but not to sky. Hold tight to each other, hold tight. Trees don't run, no, but a tree wouldn't even if it could.
Bravo.
Nice. How many more? I'll just 2 more. It's June. The grass is stuck to my folded legs. The wall is stone. I am humming. I am singing like I always have. I am asking the sun, does she remember painting my chest in the forest when I first found it, a ledge, like the face of the asking edges of my soul? And she laughs. We both know how I got here. Jumping, of course. Maybe rain dances by. If it does, I look up to smile it in, and we laugh too. Remember, I ask, when we knew without knowing how love would live here. The standing outside the door, mouthing crazy from familiar lips, how we said it would have to be okay to trust a storm passing through, knowing the way the light hits after, what colors we get to witness when it's done. And I kiss it in my hands, pour it over me like my shoulders are growing flowers. I am cradled in the dirt and half-written pages. There's still a moment, maybe, to fill them with the rest of me, till there's nothing left of me. I think I have discovered how to be a tree. Just write me down on paper, put me in a book, take me to the forest and read me out loud. One day, if anything, when my heart carries its time-keeping to no time, no place, I want 1,000 roses, folded poetry, cover me in song, mix my smoke with flaming meter, the parts of me unearthbound, stars welcoming me home. I have one more, which is my most recent. This is inspired by Monet. This is called Monet Paints the Seine as It Melts. I wonder where he stood when his spine must have straightened as the words came through. I want to change the way people see. How many days worth of brushstrokes does it take to find the liminal space between a shadow and a sun ray? How many breaths have filled a canvas to recreate two sides of a coin in the same scenery? I know this feeling. I wondered last night, have I been in his body before? Was I standing there at the lilies outside of the museum walls, maybe laying in the grass? Was I floating in a notion of wonder at the way water turns to puddles of jewels, and why? Why do people sit in boats thinking of who may love them, or what plans are for later, or how much time has the clock given away since the morning? Have they dared to remove themselves beyond their sight to see something of a vision? I visit the parking lot. Each time I see something different. I have spoken with a raven at the entrance. Can anyone hear? I've sat in the car watching what time does to the way we walk. Two butterflies float inside a river of air, and every eye is in the past, and every eye is married to the floor. Do they see a holy ground? Do they see how their breath becomes the river? How they breathe in water and become whatever dance those wings have left behind? I want to change the way people see. I want to paint the world as it really is. Not earth and sky and the bodies that fill it. Not simply a moment in oil. His wife left her body. At an easel, he painted her a mountain. He painted her winter with a small smile. Maybe it's what the mouth does when it remembers peace. It is cold and it is dark. Under a veil of snow and gray, her face says, "This is paradise returning." In the corner, the light agrees. The red of her heart says, "Hello, I have been here," as the shades were closed and the cries were heard and the saris were laid out across the wood. She is a smiling winter and a beautiful ending who knows she begins. That year, the Seine was frozen and he painted the ice for weeks until islands formed, until islands turned to depth again, and he said, with perception, "We are susceptible seasons. We are breaking apart into cold shapes. Melting is a natural order." The light does that, warms. And what a world would it be to not know when it touches the skin. This is not a dark shade hiding under willows. This is a space and what feelings fill it. This is the invisible dance, as it really is, whole, as it really is what it couldn't be without the other.
Take thy breath away. I told you, I have gifted children. God, Jess, you humble me. Jesus Christ. Did you hear that? Did you listen to the space between the words? Did you listen to the naturalness of the alliteration in onomatopoeics, without even a thought of the consequence beyond the necessity to express herself the way she had to express herself? You talk about music that Miss Kindle mentioned in that brilliant piece. There it is in Ferlinghetti, talking the space between the spoken word and music. There it is. And to myself, who is a composer, librettist, who breathes music, what sweet song it is.